Is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. My name is Cameron Richardson, and joining me as always is Sean Clark. Sean, are you feeling better today compared to Wednesday?
I am. My symptoms have definitely improved, and hopefully, we'll use this weekend to rest up and feel normal on Monday.
And joining us today to preview all the NFL divisional games this weekend and UFC 270 between Francis Ngannou and Cito Gane headlining Brendan Martin and Evan McNeely. Gentlemen, happy weekend.
Happy weekend. It's finally that time.
It's nice. It's nice getting to relax this next couple days.
Where to begin? Where to begin? Oh, how about with the NFL divisional playoffs? First up, it's the Bengals and the Titans. The Bengals coming off a pretty competitive win, the most competitive win of last weekend over the Las Vegas Raiders, 26-19. And now they're rewarded by heading to Nashville to take on the number 1 seed Tennessee Titans. And from the jump, I mean, let's just say while Wild Card weekend was pretty much a stinker, I don't think we have a terrible matchup here. We don't have a lopsided match. Maybe you could argue 49ers Packers just because the pack, you go back to 2 years ago when the 49ers blew out the Packers, but this is an entirely different matchup, but with the same head coaches. But Sean, I'm going to start with you on Bengals and Titans. It's the return of Derrick Henry, but is that really a positive for Tennessee entering the postseason with how well Mike Vrabel seemed to have this team going to secure the number 1 seed, even though they spent most of the season without their star running back?
Well, let's be honest here. The Titans basically slugged their way to the number 1 overall seed. We got to remember, they took some bad losses over the last couple months of the season. They lost 22-13 at home to the Houston Texans. They were blown out by the Patriots. And not to mention, they lost to the woeful offense known as the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, Deontay Foreman actually kind of had a breakout second half of the season. And I think that depending on Derrick Henry's health, he could get a really good chance to be the number 1 running back for a different team. Just not Tennessee, obviously, because as long as Derrick Henry's healthy, he'll be the number 1 guy. But I think that this is a huge boost for Tennessee to have Derrick Henry back. Because even as great as Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, and Deontay Foreman have been over the last few years, combined with Deontay Foreman over the last couple months, Derrick Henry is still the number 1 option for that offense, undoubtedly. If you look at it this way, Deontay Foreman really got loose in a way because the opposing defenses thought, oh, Tennessee's just going to focus on the pass. They don't got no running game. So Deontay Foreman kind of took them by surprise. But now with Derrick Henry back, what do you think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to do, especially with defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi out with injury? Oh, we gotta stack the box. We gotta make sure that Derrick Henry can get going. But guess what that means? That will provide plenty of opportunities for Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown, who, by the way, A.J. Brown has been banged up a lot this season. So now you give him an extra week to get fresh. And let's be real here, the Cincinnati Bengals don't really have that elite shutdown cornerback. A.J. Brown could really have a huge day. So Derrick Henry's return not only opens things up for the running game, but it could also open things up for the passing game because they're going to be more focused on the run than teams have been over the last couple months. And that's going to give more opportunities for a rested A.J. Brown to go off. Because I tell you what, when A.J. Brown has opportunities to get open, he can go absolutely off. Just look at the 49ers game. He didn't really do anything in the first half. And then basically throughout the entire second half, he caught 11 passes for 145 yards and a touchdown. Ryan Tannehill literally just force fed A.J. Brown the ball, and look what happened. He went absolutely off, and the Titans won that game. If the Titans don't beat the 49ers, which took place 2 days before Christmas, the Titans don't end up as the number 1 seed. That doesn't happen. And the 49ers could have possibly been in the running for a division title if they won that game as well. So that game had huge ramification on the playoffs. And the Titans won solely because they just fed A.J. Brown. And since the Bengals don't really have that shutdown corner piece that could really contain Brown, Derrick Henry's return is going to free him up a bit more. And that's not good news for the Bengals, who may have to put up a lot of points of their own to keep up, unlike their wild card win over the Raiders, where their defense did pretty well for the most part.
Evan, with the inconsistency of Tennessee this season, can we really trust them against an offense that's just loaded with weapons?
That's kind of where I'm stuck at right now, because I feel like for both these teams, they both have very inconsistent and unreliable kind of middle of the pack defenses where they do enough to get you into the playoffs and win you games against worse teams, but you just don't know if they have the defensive power to stop guys like Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, like the elite of the elite of the NFL at their position. So it's definitely going to be an interesting battle. And to me, it's the Bengals' 7th ranked passing offense against an average Titans defense, and then the 5th ranked Titans rushing offense against a very average Bengals defense. And it's who's going to be able to execute their game plan better against the opponent's defense, because we all know Tennessee, if Derrick Henry's healthy and ready to carry this team, they're going to be feeding him the rock. And if he can get going, that could cause a lot of issues for the Bengals, who, like, their rush defense, it's not atrocious, but it's also not going to stunt an offense whose primarily game is ground and pound. And then with the Titans, I just don't know if the Titans can stop the Bengals passing game, but at the same time, they've done a good job getting turnovers this season and forcing turnovers despite giving up a lot of yards. So it's kind of a give and take on both ends, because you don't know if the Bengals are going to be able to force fumbles against Derrick Henry, or if the Titans are going to be able to pick off and force turnovers against Joe Burrow. So it's just, if Derrick Henry is back and ready to go fresh, I think I'd have to lean Titans just because of how consistent their run game can be when everyone's healthy and going. On the other hand, and if Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and that Bengals organization are actually ready to go on a playoff run here, just a couple years into kind of their rebuilding process from the Andy Dalton era, that'd be impressive, and I'd be a little bit surprised. But at the same time, I think they have the star power not only, but the in-game firepower to get it done and to keep up with the team. If the Bengals jump out to an early lead, I don't know if the Titans have the passing offense to catch up with them and play that guns blazing game. Whereas if the Titans are able to control the clock on the Bengals, I feel like they could struggle with turnovers. It's kind of a this or that game. One's going to happen, maybe a little bit of both, but neither is a real tell to who's going to win, because each team can still win without perfectly executing their game plan because of the nature of both of these defenses.
Brenden, I'll kind of get the prediction started with you for this game, but just even with the Bengals being that new, fresh team in the playoffs, they kind of serve as a nightmare for any team. So are we potentially looking at the number 1 seed falling with just how dangerous and lethal Cincinnati's offense has been this season?
I mean, yeah, with how crazy the season has been with the upsets, kind of like what Sean mentioned, how the big losses that the Titans have had, this is probably one of the better chances that we do see an upset. I mean, when you look at the Bengals, yes, they are a brand new team, freshly in the playoffs, having their first playoff win in around 30 years at this point. They are the fresh new team on the block, and that's scary because teams don't quite understand them yet. Obviously, you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase as some of among one of, if not the best quarterback wide receiver duo of the year. And teams are still trying to figure that out. And obviously, with the Titans just getting Derrick Henry back, we're not 100% sure what Derrick Henry you're going to get. Now, obviously, any Derrick Henry you take on the field, you more than likely want to have that. But a guy who hasn't played in for a majority of the year, who's just now getting through contact drills. I mean, obviously they're ramping up his process to get back on the field as they should. But we don't know if he more than likely won't be 100%, and obviously the Bengals will want to key in on him, and that's certainly going to be an issue for a guy who's hasn't played in months at this point. So absolutely, I think there's a good chance that we do see the 1 seed fall in the divisional round, and that's what I'm going to predict. You did say we're in terms of getting the ball rolling in terms of predictions. If I were to put a score on this game, I mean, I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's essentially a pick'em game, despite Titans being the number 1 seed. It all is going to hinge on if Derrick Henry gets started early. If he gets hot early, then the Bengals are in trouble. But if we get to halftime and Henry has maybe 30 yards on double-digit carries, then you have an issue there. So I'm going to say that the Bengals do pull off the upset in a way. Final score, I'm going to say Cincinnati 28, Tennessee 24.
We've got our first upset pick. I think this is the first upset pick we've made because I wouldn't consider 49ers Cowboys really all that of an upset for the 49ers winning, especially looking back on that game now. So there we go. Sean, do we agree with that sentiment, or will Derrick Henry and the Titans run over Cincinnati's defense?
I think this game is going to play out a lot like the 49ers game did. I believe that the Bengals are going to come out hot early. They're now playing with house money, essentially. Usually when you win a game in the wild card round, the next round you usually go in with house money, especially if you're going on the road. I think the Bengals are going to jump out to an early lead, but then I think the coaching of Mike Vrabel starts to contain the Cincinnati offense, which, let's be real, did not look the greatest against the Las Vegas Raiders. We've seen the Bengals be a lot more explosive against better defenses in the regular season. They looked solid, but they didn't look phenomenal against the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think the Titans defense is definitely an upgrade. I think that the Titans rust will show early. And I think the Bengals will jump out to a double-digit lead. But like I said, and Evan, I have to disagree with you. The Titans do have that capability coming back. They literally showed it a few weeks ago. I think that A.J. Brown is going to have a massive second half. And I think that he will make a Hall of Fame-esque catch to give the Titans a late lead. And I think the Titans will win 24-17.
I'm going to just start off. I agree with Sean here. I do think the Titans are able to get the win. One person that could be an X factor in this game, it could kind of turn the game complexion on his head, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon only had 44 yards on the ground against the Raiders last week. If the Bengals are going to beat this Titans team, they need to be able to run the ball effectively to drain clock against them at the end of the game. Because Derrick Henry will be able to outrush Joe Mixon at the end of the game if he needs to in order to catch up if the game's tight. But that being said, I think the Titans they have the week of rest. The Bengals offense looked a little bit sloppy last week. They gave up a lot of points to the Raiders, so I think I have to lean Titans here, 27-24.
Here's where I'm sitting, and while Derrick Henry, I believe, is the best running back on the field, he's the best player on the field when he's out there and healthy. He hasn't played since Halloween. That was three months ago, just under 3 months ago. The Titans are going to treat him like, Jesus and the disciples and the people begging them for food because they have nothing. They're going to treat this like Jesus feeding the 5,000. He's going to everybody's expecting Derrick Henry to feed him the fish and the bread, but I just don't think that's going to be the option there for Tennessee. Everyone's expecting Derrick Henry to carry the load. He comes back and it's going to be this miraculous return for Derrick Henry. He's going to run for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the Titans are going to roll over Cincinnati. That's just not the case. You have to stick with what's been working this season. You're the number 1 seed for the reason. You did it mostly without your star running back. You've got to, Brian Tannehill has to have somewhat pressure on him. He can't just relax and settle in and be like, okay, I can just feed Derrick Henry. Because I'll tell you this, if they're running 6, 7 rushes in the first 9, 10 plays, I think Derrick Henry's going to get stuffed, and it's going to come down to Ryan Tannehill. And if Tennessee's not willing to mix it up, they're going to find themselves down multiple possessions. Cincinnati's going to be up, and Cincinnati might be able to cruise from there. If Cincinnati's offense can break out and have a comfortable lead, forget about it. It's over because they can just relax from there. And I don't think Tennessee, similar to how I view Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, they're not a team that can really play from behind often, and especially not in the postseason. So this is not a team. Tennessee's not a team that's formidable as a 1 seed. They aren't the Bills or Chiefs in my eye. And I just think Cincinnati's a dangerous team. You don't want to play them in the postseason. And while they're still young and, new to the postseason, Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow, and their receiving core, I just think they're a team that's made for today's NFL and a team that can thrive in today's NFL, especially with the pressure that the playoffs bring. So I think it's going to be a comfortable win for Cincinnati. While it's going to be competitive, I still think they're going to win by multiple possessions. I'm going to take Cincinnati here 27-13. And now we move to the night game on Saturday, 49ers Packers, which probably should be the easiest one to pick, but you never know with the 49ers, especially with what we got last weekend. Sean, if there's any keys that can help San Francisco knock off Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau, what's it going to be?
If San Francisco is going to win this game, they got to do 3 things almost perfectly. 1, they need to win time of possession. If you give Aaron Rodgers chance after chance to light up your secondary, which, by the way, is the 49ers' weakest unit of their entire team, it's going to be ugly. They have to win time of possession. Because I tell you what, Aaron Rodgers against the 49ers secondary is a horrendous matchup. Number 2, regardless who starts a quarterback, because we don't know for sure who's going to start a quarterback, they cannot give up a single sack. Because I tell you what, and I'll go into this when we make the prediction, the Green Bay Packers have a lot of players returning from injury. 2 of those players are Zadarius Smith and Whitney Merciless. You do not want those 2 getting in the backfield constantly. If the 49ers are faced with pressure constantly, they have no chance. Plain and simple. And the third thing they got to do, remember when Jimmy G let the Cowboys back into the game with that ugly interception to Anthony Brown? That can't happen. That cannot happen. And remember, Jimmy G is also the same guy who threw a couple costly interceptions against the Titans and blew that game. And if not for a miracle win against the LA Rams, that game would have knocked out the 49ers out of the playoffs. So, limit no turnovers, dominate time of possession, and don't give up sacks. All 3 of the keys to the game are on the one side of the ball. Because I already know exactly what's going to happen on the other side of the ball. You're really going to tell me that Aaron Rodgers is not going to have a field day on that secondary? Especially when Aaron Rodgers is probably going to hear all week, oh, you're 0-3 against this team in the playoffs. Oh, you haven't beaten this team in the playoffs, even though it's your hometown team, and they're the ones that pass up on you, but you haven't beaten them in the playoffs. You don't think he's going to hear that all week long? Oh, no, he definitely is.
Sean, I'm surprised you didn't mention that, what happened back on September 26th when these 2 played each other in week 3 and how close of a game that was and how exciting of a game that was. So are we trending toward more of a game like that, or do we expect Green Bay to roll in their home field?
Oh, no, this ain't going to be close. I'm sorry. This is...
Do you already have a final score prediction?
Oh, yes, 31-10. This is not going to be close whatsoever. I can't express this enough. The 49ers secondary is bad. They are constantly getting torched by wide receivers. The only reason that the Cowboys offense didn't really take advantage of that is because they outsmarted themselves. Troy Aikman talked about it. CeeDee Lamb was covered one-on-one the entire game. He should have been fed all game long. Remember how I talked about how A.J. Brown went off? There's another example right there. You also look at a lot of teams that they played this season. DeAndre Hopkins went off on them. You constantly see the LA Rams have success against them. Even the Seattle Seahawks swept them. Why? Secondary again. Those Seattle receivers feasted on that secondary. I think that Green Bay and Devontae Adams are going to light them up, and especially with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa not 100%, regardless if they both play, they're not 100%. Those are your two best players on that side of the ball. Because Fred Warner is a top 5 middle linebacker, and Nick Bosa, I'm sorry, should have been first team All-Pro. It's an absolute robbery that he wasn't first team All-Pro. He has a concussion. While he most likely will play, he's not going to be at 100%. Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for 4 touchdown passes on that woeful 49ers secondary. On the other side of the ball, I see Jimmy G throwing at least 3 interceptions, 2 of them to another returner, Jair Alexander, who's been out almost the entire season. You don't think he's going to be excited to be back and just pick off some errant Jimmy G passes or even Trey Lance? This ain't going to be close. I'm sorry, but it isn't.
Now, when we talk about the 49ers pass defense, it actually hasn't been terrible this year. I mean, when you look at teams like the LA Rams, who they beat both times, they only surrendered 226 in the first game back in November, and then at the end of the season only gave up 201. So, I mean, the 49ers pass defense is formidable if they want to show up on the given occasion. I mean, they almost half their games this season, they allowed under 200 passing yards. So, it's not a bad pass defense, even though Sean said their secondary is pretty much shot. But
well, that's due to their pass rush disrupting the flow of quarterbacks. But when they don't get that pass rush, that secondary cannot hold their own very well. They just have a really good front seven that helps out that secondary, but it's not going to help you. It's not going to bail you out in the postseason forever.
Well, I mean, you talk about that front seven. That front seven surrendered a lot of rushing yards this year. I mean, they got torched by Chicago of all teams, Philadelphia they got torched by, Seattle they got torched by, and Detroit they allowed over 102. So, Evan, are we expecting Green Bay to pull off a route, as Sean said, or, is there hope that the 49ers can at least put up a competitive fight?
I'm a little more skeptical against Green Bay on this one, just because how have they been eliminated from the playoffs in the last 2 years? And it's been defensive play. It hasn't been anything to do with their offense. Their offense has gone tit for tat with teams in title games the last 2 years, but the defense in both of them ended up choking. 2 years ago with the 49ers, they had 150 rushing yards before contact, I believe, or something close to that, which is just ridiculous. It was an absolute defensive nightmare. And then the next year in the NFC Championship game last year against the Buccaneers, the secondary got torched by a guy named Scotty Miller. The 49ers have Deebo Samuel and Brenden Ayuk, 2 very athletic playmakers who can turn a game entirely on its head. I don't know if Green Bay is ready to stop a team that has dynamic offensive weapons. That scares me. I don't know if they're ready, because we saw what Deebo did last week, as he Deebo's almost every team across this league throughout this entire season. One of the absolute most exciting offensive players in the league right now, being able to split time between the backfield and wideout, almost doing what Cordero Patterson's finally doing, but, earlier in his career. And we could see a lot of this from him over the years. But are the Packers ready to stop him? Is this defense upgraded enough to be a legit playoff threat? These are questions that I still don't think are answered, especially because we haven't seen Jair all season. And then offensively for Green Bay, Takatari's still questionable. So you need him back to block for Aaron Rodgers, because like Cam brought up, even though this front seven's given up a lot of rush yardage this year, they have a very good pass rush. So they're going to need to keep Aaron Rodgers protected if they're going to win. And I think this game could be closer and even an upset, but I would definitely lean Packers if I had to make a pick.
Got a final score?
Yeah, final score. Let's go. Let's go 31 Packers, 24 Niners.
Now, Brenden, we saw last week that Jimmy Garoppolo is known to make his own mistakes and, he tried losing that game for the 49ers last week, essentially. So going into this one, are the Packers going to beat the 49ers, or will Jimmy G and the 49ers beat themselves?
I mean, it's certainly going to be a little bit of both, and I think Jimmy G will be the catalyst as to why that is, and whether it's him on the field or not. Remember, going into the Cowboys game and a few games before that, he's been playing on a torn UCL on his throwing thumb. Obviously, that's not going to help your accuracy. Obviously, that's going to put some doubt in your mind if you're going to be able to put as much mustard on your throws as you want to get it to your receiver. And not only that, he's got a shoulder injury now he suffered in that Cowboys game. The dude is banged up. And what we know about the 49ers ever since they've had Jimmy G, when he's fully healthy, they are one of the most dangerous teams in the league, and they made a Super Bowl. They almost won a Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs with a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo. But whenever he's hurt, that's when this team falls, and I'll give credit to him for being able to have that sort of impact when he's healthy. But right now, he's simply not. And I think you can tell that his thumb was bothering him on those errant passes, especially at the end of that game against Dallas. So whether or not he is going to be that guy that plays, I think he's expected to start, but maybe he gets banged up a lot more. Maybe he gets sacked 5 times in the first half. Obviously, that can hurt have his injuries be aggravated even more, and maybe we do see a Trey Lance come in. And if Trey Lance is in, I don't think he's going to be ready for that task, especially at Lambeau Field, and that's going to be the real issue. Garoppolo's just going to have to find a way to to remain healthy, and even if he does struggle, he's going to be the best option that the Niners have, and unfortunately, that option is just not going to be good enough. I think they're going to have to rely a lot on the run game. Obviously, I think the Packers will key in on Deebo Samuel, knowing what he's capable of now that he's essentially becoming their running back. The fact of the matter is Jimmy G is going to have to throw more than 8 passes this time around. That's not going to fly this time. Like you guys mentioned, the returners on the Packers defense. So, I mean, we saw Aaron Rodgers capable of do against secondary. I mean, he had 37 seconds left when he got the ball back in week 3, and he put him back into field goal position to win the game. I mean, we're going to see a ton of that. We're going to see a ton of chunk yardage from Rodgers and the Packers, and I think they'll yet again make another NFC Championship game. If I had to make a final score, I'm going to say Packers 35, Niners 13.
Yeah, and I've said multiple times this season, when you look at the chemistry of Rodgers and Davante Adams, you can't stop it. There's no defensive scheme. There's no coverage you can put on Adams and Rodgers when they're completely locked in. They just find each other no matter what. You can press, you can play off. Davante Adams is going to make a play. So I have no reason why Davante Adams won't catch 12, 13 passes for 180 yards and a touchdown or 2. That's Green Bay's MO. It's going to be annoying to watch because everybody's like, oh, go. Everybody's going to tweet, well, why can't they cover Davante Adams? It's just because that chemistry Rodgers and Adams have is just impeccable. You cannot stop it. And watch. And I'll tell you right now, you're going to see all those tweets during the game of people saying, why can't they cover Davante Adams? Why can't they cover Davante Adams? You just can't. It just happens. You just have a quarterback and wide receiver who are just so tightly connected that they're going to make a play no matter what. Any coverage you throw on, it's just going to be impossible to stop. You can throw Jacksonville's 2017 defense on them. Davante Adams is still going to catch over 100 yards. That's just where they're at. And that's just going to be the key. And the Packers should roll easily. I'm going to say they win 34-14. Now, Sunday's games. I cannot wait for these. We've got the Rams-Bucks, which is also a rematch from earlier this season. Another game that was played when Sean and I were in Las Vegas. Guys, it was pretty much a shootout in the passing game. Both teams were well over 300 yards. Tampa Bay had 400, though, in the losing effort. So, obviously Tom Brady got better and better as the season got along. And, they looked all in sync, beating the Philadelphia Eagles last weekend. So, Sean, does Stafford have a path to defeating Tom Brady in the postseason? This would be kind of a rarity. It'd be a shocker if Matthew Stafford, a guy not accustomed to the playoffs, were to knock off Tom Brady, the greatest playoff player in NFL history. But if they're going to do it, how do they do it? Is it going to be on the defensive side, or is it going to be more of the Rams offense?
The Los Angeles Rams are winning this game. There, I said it. And a big reason for that, and unfortunately, this is not a reason I wanted to say, the Buccaneers are too banged up to win a Super Bowl. They are way too banged up right now to defend their title. They don't have a true number one running back with Leonard Fournette's injury. They're extremely banged up at the wide receiving core. Chris Godwin obviously out for the season. Cyril Grayson is banged up. You have their offensive line, which is incredibly banged up. Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs are both banged up and did not practice yesterday. Only 2 days before the game. They haven't practiced yet this week. It's not looking great. Rashad Perriman also did not participate yesterday. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a very banged up team. And you know who can perfectly feast on that? The LA Rams. Let me just real quick break down this. So the offensive line injuries. What does the offensive line do? They protect the quarterback. Who did the Rams have going after Tom Brady? Von Miller, who has had 6 sacks in his last 5 games. And trust me, as a Patriots fan, I could definitely tell you Von Miller rushing Tom Brady in the playoffs is not a good recipe for Tom Brady. I can tell you that for a fact. Also, Aaron Donald, right up the middle against where Ryan Jensen was in the interior of the offensive line. Oh, Lord. You think Tom Brady can just avoid Aaron Donald? He's the greatest of all time, but I don't even think like a guy like Josh Allen could avoid Aaron Donald when he's running full speed at you. That's just not going to happen. Also, the Buccaneers wide receiving core, it is very, very thin. Very thin. And what did the Rams have a good unit of? Their secondary. Jalen Ramsey can lock up Mike Evans. And I think Darius Williams and the rest of that secondary are like, oh, these are basically fifth string wide receivers. Oh, this shouldn't be too bad. The Rams defense is going to have a huge game after having their best showing in the wild card round against the Arizona Cardinals. And offensively, the Buccaneers secondary has been banged up all season. You think that they're going to be able to cover Odell Beckham? Not really, because he has become a legit number 2 wide receiver on this team. We all thought, Robert Woods is down. The Rams are in big trouble. Well, the last few weeks, Odell Beckham has easily become that number 2 wide receiver. And I think he's going to have a very good game this upcoming Sunday. I think that Cooper Kupp is going to do what Cooper Kupp does. And with the Rams continuing to run the ball better, I think that the Rams are going to win this game. I think they played a perfect game against Tampa Bay back in week 3. And I think now with the Rams being much healthier than the Buccaneers right now, I see the Rams going into Tampa Bay and getting the victory to advance to the NFC Championship game. I think Matthew Stafford picks up playoff win number 2. And I'll say the final score is the Rams will win 27-17.
I think what goes overlooked, and we talk about the Rams defense, over the last couple of years, but when you look at this season, they've had 8 games where they scored over 30 points. So if you're going to beat the Rams, not only do you have to overcome Aaron Donald and their secondary, you've got to beat Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has excelled, and while he had some struggles towards the end of the season, I mean, he turned it around perfectly in the playoff game against Arizona Cardinals. So Matthew Stafford's not shying away from the big moment. He knows what his expectations were when he came to LA. He's probably gotten some advice from Clayton Kershaw, one of his best friends from his childhood, who had his playoff slumps before the Dodgers were able to win their World Series in 2020, as as legit or as illegit as you'd want, as people will say it was. Clayton Kershaw still has a ring. So, Evan, when we talk about, overcoming those playoff, woes, can a guy that hasn't been there all that much versus the guy that's been there, won his 7 rings, is that going to be the ultimate difference, or is it going to come down to another aspect of the Rams and Bucks? Is it going to be the, how the Bucks replace their O-line with Tristan Wirfs and their center down, or, is it going to be on the Rams side more?
I mean, I think Sean kind of nailed the hammer on the head here with talking about the Rams pass rush, because with the injuries to the Buccaneers offensive lines, this game is going to be won or lost for both teams in the trenches. If Von Miller and Aaron Donald and that Rams pass rush are able to get after Tom Brady, similar to how they got after the more mobile Kyler Murray last week, Brady's a statue. You can bring him down for sacks and you can force longer drives. The thing is, Brady's better at forcing the ball downfield in second and long and third and long situations in order to pick up the long first down. So there's a bit of a give and take, and the Buccaneers definitely have a very talented receiver group that can pick up long yardage. So it's going to be the Rams getting quick pressure, confusing Brady, it's very hard to do. That, confusing Brady and trying to, mess with Brady's head and perception of what's happening on the field. It's one of the hardest things in the league. He's been around the longest. He's done it the most. And like you said, that playoff experience is very, very valuable. That being said, Matthew Stafford made the playoffs with the Lions. So he has a little bit of experience there. He may not have won a game, but he made the playoffs with the Lions, which says a lot. Now that he's here with the Rams, and I feel like this is a team that's also starting to kind of get healthy all around them. The running game started to get going last week, and then their receiver group, even though they lost Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp is one of the best receivers in the league this year. And then, you have Odell Beckham, who, like you said, is kind of blossoming into this kind of true number 2 target again for the Rams. And coming from being the one at one point in his career in the Giants to kind of falling off in Cleveland, and then now back to a number 2 role where he's seen consistent targets again. It's kind of been a journey for Odell, and I think this could be a big game for him in terms of showing what he's really worth in the big deal here, because the Rams, they traded for him this season. I think if he's able to come up big during this game and be a solid target for Matthew Stafford, I think it does a lot for not only his stock as a player currently, for how he's viewed across the NFL, but also that would be huge for this Rams team, who needs to get something going offensively against a very talented Buccaneers offense. Both offenses are going to be able to score. Both are going to be able to move the ball a little bit. It comes down to who's able to deal with defensive pressure the best. Because if Matthew Stafford's getting hit a bunch and throwing some risky passes and turning the ball over, the Rams are going to really struggle keeping up with Tom Brady. But if the Rams are able to sack Tom Brady, limit the run game as much as they can. Leonard Fournette's had an amazing year by most standards. So I think both of these teams are just multifaceted on offense. They can do things in a lot of different ways. They're very experienced. They have good play calling. It's going to come down to the defenses making disruptions. And I think right now with the injuries to the Buccaneers, I think the Rams have the advantage, but we'll see how playoff experience ends up paying off in the matchup.
Yeah, and we talked about it being a game in the trenches. I think what we're overlooking here is that the Bucks are going to be missing one of their key pass rushers, and that's Jason Pierre-Paul. He is out for that game against the Rams on Sunday. So, Brenden, when we look at this game, obviously it was a shootout the first time they played each other, but we've seen both these defenses show up in times. We've all seen both, offenses just get into complete and utter shootouts. So what game are we trending more closely to? Is it going to be a game in the trenches? I think my follow-up question would be, what's more important for the Rams? Is it their rushing offense, especially with Cam Akers being back, or is it going to be Matthew Stafford's arm, and can he find Cooper Kupp in the right moments?
To start off with that, I think that Matthew Stafford's arm is going to be the biggest factor in this game because it's his arm that will win or lose the game for the Rams, as it has for the majority of the season. When he's throwing multiple interceptions, that team has struggled, and they hover around 500. Whereas when they don't throw he doesn't throw an interception. I believe they're undefeated. So it is going to be all based on Matthew Stafford's arm. And of course, a lot of that was going to have to be supplemented by the running game, which had a great game against Arizona. I think the Los Angeles is going to have that upper hand in terms of being fresh off playing against a better team in the Cardinals than the Buccaneers did against the Eagles. And while the Bucs did torch Philadelphia, understandably so, it did look like they were starting to trying to get that through that game as quickly as possible with all the injuries they had up front. And I was surprised to see Tom Brady in the game for as long as he was, considering that they had lost a good amount of depth at that at the offensive line in those positions. So when the Rams have someone like Aaron Donald, they're going to put pressure on Brady, and they're going to make him wish that he was a mobile quarterback, because that's just not who he is. And they're gonna force him to get rid of the ball early. He led the league in passing yards this year. He's going to be doing more what he did in New England, was just dinking and dunking to guys who maybe wouldn't be on the field if it weren't for those injuries. So I think that the Rams, they have this, even though the game is in Tampa, I think they should be considered the favorite. They beat him early on in the season, and it really is just a matter of, will Matthew Stafford be smart with the ball? Will he not take 50-50 shots early on in the game where that could potentially swing the game into the Bucs' favor early, or will the Rams get the pressure on Tom Brady early and force him to make quick passes that aren't deep, and quick passes that are not going to get them the chunk yardage they need? So I think the Rams should be the favorite in this one, and I think they will pull out of Tampa Bay with a win.
Yeah, and I don't think the Eagles are the best setup matchup to go from one week to the next, especially with how good the Rams are. The Eagles last weekend proved that we don't need an extra 7 seed in the postseason. Not the Steelers, not the Eagles. Those are two teams that definitely were not worthy of playing in the postseason. In postseason football, I would have rather have seen the Chargers. I mean, the NFL should have just vetoed the Steelers being out and just inserted the Chargers and Justin Herbert. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could pretty much have a fan vote for the 7th seed. But again, I still think that if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it. But the NFL, the MLB, we've seen, time and time again with rule changes where if it ain't broke, you still fix it anyway. Just too many sports where we see this happen. You look at the UFC and fighters not being able to have their own uniforms and sponsors. You look at the NBA and how it's favored highly offensively, and the NFL and the taunting rule and all that. I mean, we like to have fun with our sports, but yet the rules are saying no, we need to eliminate as much fun and uniqueness as possible from our games. What makes our games unique, we're going to make sure it's all universal and every game is one and the same. But to look at predictions, yeah, I think the Rams should be favored. And here's where I think the game is going to lie on. It's going to be early. It's going to be on Tampa Bay's opening drive. Like what we saw against Green Bay last year in the NFC title game. I think Brady's going to try to take a deep shot to scare the Rams. And when he thinks he's going to be a big 60, 70-yard touchdown, it's actually going to be a Rams interception. And that's when the Rams will assert their dominance and take over. And they're going to score and go up on the Bucs. And I think that'll be all she wrote from there. I just think if, Brady takes a deep shot, and that's going to be the decider right there. Whatever, if Tampa Bay's opening with the ball, if they have the ball second, Brady's going to take a deep shot early to sort of have the Rams, thinking. But I think the Rams are prepared for that. And I think that deep shot Brady takes early on is going to lead to a Rams interception. And that's going to be where the Rams take over. And while it will be early, I think the Rams will know that, hey, we're the better team. Y'all just played the Eagles. We're not the Eagles. We are so much better than Philadelphia. And I think the Rams are going to win probably another shootout. I'm looking at like 34-27, similar to the game we saw in week 3. But I think we can all agree. I think the Rams are walking out of Tampa Bay with the victory. It's just not only do I think they're the better team, it's just tough to go back to back in the NFL. But you never know with Tom Brady. I mean, this you can flip a coin on this one. Finally, gentlemen, talk about coin flips, Bills and Chiefs to close out the divisional round. Couldn't be more excited for this one. The Bills coming off what was a perfect game, an immaculate game. You could not play an NFL game any better than the Bills offense did against New England Patriots, winning by 30. And then the Chiefs, as we all expected, went on to absolutely demolish and obliterate the Pittsburgh Steelers and sent Ben Roethlisberger into shame, into retirement. Hopefully, please do not come back to the NFL, Big Ben. Sean, I think this is the perfect matchup. I think the Bills and Chiefs are locked in at the right time. They're playing their best football at the right time. It doesn't seem like any team really has a hole at this very moment. So what's going to give? How does a team break free from the other?
This is the real AFC Championship game. No offense to the Bengals or the Titans, but whoever wins this game is going to inevitably win next week.
Hey, just saying, it was only a couple weeks ago that the Bengals walked into Kansas City. Oh, no, they were at home, but they still knocked off the Chiefs.
They did. And the Titans did also beat the Chiefs. So I will say that, but I still think that whoever wins this game will end up going to the Super Bowl because of what you just said. Both teams who were both in the AFC Championship game last year are playing their best football at the right time of year. I don't really see any two teams in the entire league that are playing better than these two teams right now. This is definitely the game to watch. Yes, as much as it pains me to say, yes, the Bills did play the perfect game last week. They finally figured it out. All season long, we've just been waiting for the Bills to turn on the switch. We've just been waiting for them to do that. They just were muddling around their living room trying to find the switch, feeling all sides of the wall, running into their kitchen, running into the dining room table. But they finally found the light switch for the Christmas lights, for the fluorescent lights and all that. And it was a dazzling display when the switch was finally turned on because that offense looked immaculate. Devin Singletary got it going on the ground, which that alone is dangerous because the Bills were one of the worst rushing teams this season. So the fact that they were finally able to get a ground game going was huge for them. But Josh Allen, who I said should have won the MVP last year, and I also have said that he is arguably the best quarterback in the NFL at his peak. I still think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback because of his consistency and his arm talent. But at his best, I don't really think there's anyone better than Josh Allen because his accuracy when he's on is insane. His arm strength is insane. His decision-making and his vast array of arsenal is crazy. You can play perfect defense and he'll still beat you. That's just how he is. And he has an incredible arsenal at his disposal. Stephon Diggs, who has regressed from 2020, but can still be that number one go-to receiver. Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox, Isaiah McKenzie. You can just dump out a screen to him and he can give you a first down because he has a vast amount of speed. And remember what happened back in week 5. Buffalo went into Arrowhead and blew out Kansas City. Well, obviously, Kansas City is playing way better than they were at that point. You don't think Buffalo is going to have even more of that hunger to do so? You don't think that Buffalo is going to go all out like they did against the Patriots? This is a Bills revenge tour. That's what this is. They got revenge on the Patriots for essentially 20 years of misery. They're going to do their best to get revenge against the Chiefs for last year's AFC title loss. And let's say they do play the Titans in the AFC Championship game. The Bills losing really started because of the Titans. The Bills were arguably the best team in the league, and then they ran into the Titans and they lost, and they never really looked the same after that until last week. So this is essentially a Buffalo Bills revenge tour that we're going on. And we got to remember, the Bills finished the regular season with the top-ranked defense. When you combine all of that, As great as Patrick Mahomes is, as much improved as that defense has been, going from 32nd in total defense over the first 7 games to first the rest of that season, I just don't think there's a team that's better than the Bills right now. And the Bills were my preseason pick to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And after the way they played last week, I don't see any reason to change that. I just don't. This is going to be one of the best playoff games that we have seen the last few years. This is going to be a game that we're going to tell our children that we watched. And I think Buffalo's going to prevail. I think it's going to go to overtime. But I think in overtime, the Bills will get the ball first. And I think Gabriel Davis is going to catch the winning touchdown pass. And Chiefs fans, for the second time in 4 years, complaining about overtime rules again.
Well, I mean, they shouldn't be complaining about overtime rules more than, their own defensive linemen screwing them by being, ahead of the line of scrimmage for whatever reason. There's one thing that, people keep bringing up when they talk about this game, and that is this photo of Stephon Diggs after the AFC title game from last year. Everybody's like, oh, they're going to be, completely fired up. And I think Diggs is that guy. We've seen Diggs. Diggs has made probably the greatest play I've ever seen in NFL history with the Minneapolis Miracle. And it looks like this guy is going to be motivated to do that same exact thing. When you're staring and watching a team celebrate and head to the Super Bowl, that's got to do something to you from an emotional standpoint, from a mental standpoint. And when you get that opportunity to play them this season, that's just, it's got to add a certain feel to you. Evan, I know we aren't NFL players, but just, you probably had those games against, a school that either you hated or, somebody that you watched, advance to the title game or win a title game. Just what does that do if you went on to play them the next season? Just how does that change your mental state going into that next game?
I think it definitely makes you hungrier because you see this team and it's a team that you meet up with a lot or you play every season, or if it's like in your conference, and when you lose, there's nothing more bitter than losing. There is nothing that puts a more sour taste in your mouth as a competitor than losing. And then losing hurts. Losing sucks. And for Stephon Diggs to stand out there on the field and watch the other team celebrate, it reminds me of what Cincy did last year when they lost their bowl game. A few of their players stayed out on the field afterwards and watched the other team celebrating their bowl win. And what did Cincy go on and do this year? Make the college football playoffs as a group of 5 school, something we'd never seen in the history of it done. That's tenacity. Having that drive, having that will, having that kind of I don't know, it's not like a pettiness, but it's almost like you hold that grudge, And so I think that the Bills, they've held this grudge for all year. They held it certainly earlier in the season when they went and whooped KC. So at this point, as Sean said, the Bills are the number 1 defense, and the Chiefs have the 6th worst defense in the NFL. I think the Bills are going to be able to do what they want with this game, and I think it's deserved, and they've waited for this moment. And I think it's time for them to go on a bit of a run here. Last year when I broke down the AFC East's biggest needs for each team, I said for the Bills, if they solidify their pass rush, this is a Super Bowl contending, if not winning team. Now here they are. They're 2 games away. They got to knock off the Chiefs and then follow through the week after and finish the job essentially. But other than that, they're right there. They're hungry. It's been a long time coming for the Bills. And I think I'm in the same boat as Sean here. If they win this game, they're going to the Super Bowl. There's nothing that can stop this team from week 1 or from before week 1, from last season, from the off season, from the work that they did during the draft. That all has led up to this. They have done everything appropriately as a franchise. They have built in all the necessary ways that you'd hope to see out of a team right on the edge, right there, getting ready to go on a title run. They did everything right. It is earned, it is deserved, and it is Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills' time to be one of the greatest teams in the NFL.
Brenden, is this true? Is it the Bills' time? Are we looking at a Bills home game in the AFC title game, or are they going to be heading to Nashville? I mean that could always be a big difference. I think this is what it's setting up for. I think the Bengals are going to upset Tennessee, which will set up the Bills getting a home game in front of Bills Mafia for the AFC title game. Can you imagine the absolute atmosphere that is going to be if that is the case? Brenden, is this just destiny for Buffalo? I mean, we're waiting on that one divisional game that ends up being a classic. We got that with the Browns and Chiefs last year. Is this going to deliver even far more than that game did?
I think so, because like Sean mentioned, it's a rematch of the AFC Championship game last year. I mean, if you were to look at the roster of these teams in the AFC, you would think that this would be the AFC Championship matchup even this year. And while, yes, I think having a conference title game in Buffalo, in Orchard Park, where the Bills Mafia will be there no matter how cold it is. It can be in the negatives, and that stadium will be packed. We saw it with the Patriots. They were there.
-30 in a blizzard, and Bills Mafia is shirtless and still jumping through tables.
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick will come out and run on the field during halftime. It'll be great. I think that Destiny does look like it'll go that way, and I think that'd be a great spectacle to see. However, I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. I think he showed it last season in that AFC Championship game against this team at home again, by the way, that they are the team to beat in the AFC. And like I said, or like everyone else said, whoever wins this game, Chiefs or Bills, is going to the Super Bowl. They're going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Will they win the Super Bowl? We'll see. We'll see if the Packers get through and make it there as well. But I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. I think that they've also struck gold at the right time. They had a very bad start to the season. They lost to the Bills early on, but like you guys said, Chiefs are a much different team now. They look like they're running on all cylinders now, and you can't bet against them, especially on their home turf. And it would be unfortunate because I like the Bills. I love what they've done. I love Josh Allen. I love what they've been able to do there. Their running game has gotten a lot better, but it's Patrick Mahomes. That's really all there is to it. The Chiefs have been there. They've been in these situations before, and yes, obviously that AFC title game against the Patriots years ago, obviously the onus falls on them for losing that game. They have a legitimate beef in terms of overtime rules, because I think we can all agree overtime rules in the NFL are bad. They've been bad for a while, and Sean's shaking his head. But
my question is, how about don't give up a touchdown in the initial possession of overtime?
How about
why is that so hard to comprehend?
It's not hard to comprehend, but why doesn't the other team get the ball back is the question. The game is decided. The game is decided on a coin toss at that point.
You can't get a stop.
You don't deserve to get the ball back.
This is why I'd rather see golden goal in soccer. I don't want to see a full 30 minutes of full-time play out, because if you score,
I agree there because possession is going back and forth in soccer. In football, whoever gets the ball likely is going to win. Yes,
that's on your defense for not getting a stop.
Okay, well then the team that ended up scoring, why don't they have to get a stop on the other end?
Because football is a team game. If one part of your team can't get it done, why does the other deserve to have a chance? Also, win in regulation.
Well, yeah, in regulation, the team that wins overtime also didn't win regulation either.
You had 60 minutes to win the game, so there's that too.
Yeah, and both teams didn't win it in 60 minutes. So that argument falls both ways. But anyways, we're going off track. That's a discussion for another day, and I'd love to have that discussion. But this is a game that can very feasibly go to overtime. That's how good both these teams are and how evenly matched they can be. And if that's the case, then whoever wins the coin toss is going to win the game at that point, because how strong these offenses are. We've seen these teams do it in clutch times, but I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I think that his chemistry with his offense is just too good. I know that Josh Allen's chemistry with Stephon Diggs is also very good, but the Chiefs have been there. They're still in the prime. They're still trying to become a dynasty. They're not quite there yet, but they're as close to one as we've seen since New England. And I think that the Chiefs will win this, and I think they will go back to the Super Bowl.
Interesting. Well, it's not just NFL that's taking over this weekend. We've got absolutely massive, no pun intended, UFC pay-per-view this weekend, headlined by heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou taking on interim heavyweight champion Cyril Gane down in Anaheim at the Honda Center. I am very much looking forward to this matchup. This is big money matchup right here. Francis Ngannou, we know what he's done. We know what he's capable of. The man's power is absolutely insane. It can't really be. There's no real comparison. I don't think any other fighter, maybe in MMA history, has had the one punch power that Francis has had. Obviously, we all remember the viral knockout of Alistair Overeem back in 2017 and him finally overcoming Stipe Miocic back early last year in March. Just the man's an absolute nightmare. 5 straight knockout victories, all coming within 2 rounds. But on the other hand, I think this is a very formidable opponent. Cyril Gane is a technical nightmare, and dare I say that I'm picking Cyril Gane to win this fight. One, because I think Cyril Gane is smart enough to not get into an all-out brawl with Francis, because that's a stupid idea in the first place. And two, the UFC is not paying Francis Ngannou, for this fight, like not much for this fight, or not much, or not what Francis is asking. And now they got into a contract dispute. So maybe Francis's head isn't really completely in this fight, and maybe he might half-ass it to a point where it's like, okay, if I lose, I can just jump straight to boxing where I know they'll actually pay me. So Evan, I'm gonna start with you here. Should Cyril be the favorite given the circumstances that Francis is in with the UFC?
I'm going to go the opposite way with this. It's 10 times more scary that they're not giving Francis Ngannou his money. Imagine telling the guy who has the world record for world's strongest punch, no, we're not going to pay you. You don't think that's going to get some things going upstairs? You don't think that's going to...
Not to mention all the talk he stirs when it's Francis fight week. Like, we know when it's Francis fight week.
Yeah, I mean, Ngannou's... He's world record for world's strongest punch. We've never seen anyone like him. We've never seen anyone this powerful. Okay, sorry, you glitched out. My bad.
Evan's glitching bad, you guys. I think he got knocked out by Francis. Is he back? Oh, he's back. He's back.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, you're still a little bit frozen, but no, I think it's scary. Like telling a guy that strong that you're not going to pay him before he goes in the ring and tries to fight another man. Like, I feel like that could get some more competitive juices flowing. And I'd lean Francis in this fight, but at the same time, Cyril Gane, some heavyweights can just go. You never know when like a guy's just going to be able to withstand everything in a night and just keep it moving and keep the fight at their pacing. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I definitely am I'd be more worried about Francis Ngannou not getting paid, because he might come and get the performance bonus for the night with a 30-second knockout if he wants to.
Sean, I believe you've seen Francis in a fight. I can't confirm that though, because we haven't watched much UFC together. But what have you been able to dissect from what you've researched on this fight?
From what I dissected, this fight is going to be one of two things. One, it's going to be Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone, where it ends in 20 seconds. Or it's going to go all 5 rounds. I don't really think there's any in between here. Because this stat really stood out to me. The average fight time of Francis Ngannou is 5 minutes and 38 seconds. Cyril Gane is 15 minutes and 6 seconds. I was like, wow, that didn't seem realistic to me. But it makes a lot of sense. Cyril Gane is a long-range fighter. He's very technical. And not to mention, he has endurance. This fight is going to be decided in the first round. Because if Francis Ngannou can get going early, he will knock out Cyril Gane very, very quickly. But if this goes past the first round, I don't see Cyril Gane losing this. Because he'll use that first round to figure out, okay, how can I defend myself from this world record punching machine? But once he does figure that out, Francis is going to get incredibly more frustrated. He's going to leave him more vulnerable. And quite frankly, Gane is just going to outsmart him. This is either going to be a viral knockout or a fight that could put us all to sleep. It's going to be one of those two. I don't know which one. I will go with the latter, where this will be a long, drawn-out fight and Gane picks up the victory by decision. But I think it's going to be a very interesting fight either way.
Brenden, the last time we watched a UFC event together, we had the biggest upset in women's MMA history. So, what craziness should we get together if we were to get together this Saturday and watch the card?
I mean, after watching that fight, well, I don't know how long it was, weeks ago at this point. I mean, nothing is impossible at this point, knowing what we've seen there. I mean, like you guys mentioned, Ngannou's got the record for hardest punch. I think that pretty much just says it all in terms of how scary it is going up against a guy like him, especially if like you guys said, there's disputes about money. There's what happens that could this be his last go or not? That's definitely going to rile up a guy like this who has shown that he can be a feat in the ring, and because of that, I mean, it's going to be hard to go against him. It's from what it sounds like, he's the guy who can end it on one punch, and even if it does go a little bit longer than that, he at any point in time he just deliver one blow and it's over, and it's done just like that, and everyone will have spent a lot of money just to watch a few seconds or a few minutes of a match just end like that. So, I mean, but like you mentioned, we've seen the impossible seemingly happen. It's one of those things where you can go either way, and you certainly have a good case. But I'm going to stick with the guy who's got the hardest punch, because I couldn't imagine being on the other side of that.
Now, before we get to the heavyweight title fight, we've got an exact opposite with the flyweight title up for grabs, as Brenden Moreno makes his first title defense against the guy he's fought his last two fights in Deiveson Figueiredo. Obviously, we all remember the first fight back in December 2020, which was an absolute classic, one of the best 5-round fights I've ever seen that ended in a complete draw. And then the second fight back last June was another great fight that ended with Brenden Moreno taking Figgy's back and choking him out in the third round to win his first UFC title. Now, Evan Brenden has been the ultimate underdog since joining the UFC, going back to him being the last seed on the Ultimate Fighter way back in 2016. So it's been quite the career for Brenden. And, with this being the third fight in this trilogy, 3 fights in a row, it's not like they've taken time off. They've gone fight to fight to fight. Are we looking at another 50-50 fight, or is Brenden finally, asserted his dominance over Figgy?
I mean, I think that's one of the bigger storylines for this fight, and what kind of is, I think that's one of the answers we get from the outcome of this fight. But going into it, I think that Brenden Moreno definitely could cement himself as the top dog. But I'd also just like to say, how much does that speak to the lack of not ability, everyone has ability, but lack of top tier talent within the flyweight division right now, that they've had 2 guys battle for the title.
Maybe it's because a couple years ago Dana White said he didn't want a flyweight division anymore, and then just say, you know what, let's just keep it there. But thank God we got guys like Moreno and Figgy still in the UFC.
Yeah, no, so they're they've been going at it now for a year and a half, and I think
if only the UFC didn't say, let's trade Ben Askren. Let's trade Demetrius Johnson, one of our greatest fighters, for Ben Askren of one championship. Yes, a literal trade, ladies and gentlemen. This is a thing. The UFC took Ben Askren and gave away Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest talents we've ever seen in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, the way with fighting leagues are right now, where there's so many, you got the ones overseas, you got the ones here. fighting MMA is everywhere, so I'd like to see the UFC have a monopoly on fighting, because then we'd get to see all the best matchups with all the best fighters. But stuff happens, and Ben Askren, not special, but just I don't know. The flyweight division needs more weight to it. I know Dana wants to possibly get rid of it, but at the same time, when you have fights that are as good as Moreno and I can't even say the last name. I'm not even gonna try. But when you have fights as good as that at the division, why aren't you trying to find more talent to compete with them? Why isn't there more pressure for more different fights of people competing for the championship? And I get it it kind of feels like a Yankees and Red Sox in the NL East, or the AL East. You know what I'm saying? The two teams that are always deking it out for the top crown, maybe in the early 2000s and whatnot, and they're just good, but no one really competes up there with them. And so, again, this fight, it's interesting, and it's kind of hopefully the end to a trilogy and gives us the answers that we need to just continue on with the flyweight division in the UFC. But I'm definitely looking forward to maybe someone else getting in the ring with the champion following this fight.
Sean, Brenden, where are we leading on this one?
This is going to be a very, very close match. I think that Brenden Moreno has the edge just barely because of two extremely simple things. First of all, Brenden Moreno is 2 inches taller. His reach is also 2 inches longer. When you have a very evenly matched fight, statistically, they're somewhat close, but both of them are very technical. Both of them can be very defensive. Both of them, can win with submission. So I like to give the edge to someone just has a little more, just a little more reach. And Moreno has that. I think that he will be able to assert his dominance. I think this is going to be a longer fight. Both fighters, on average, go about 2.5, 3 rounds. I think that in the third round, Moreno wins by technical knockout. I think that his reach and his height advantage will give him the slight edge, and will defeat Figueroa in the third round.
Hey, y'all can't get Figueredo correct. Jeez. Figueroa. You tried,
Yeah.
Sean. You tried.
We're on Figueroa Street, Cam. All right.
Brenden,
yeah.
where are you leaning?
Yeah, I'm leaning the same way. I'm leaning towards Moreno. I think going back to when they last fought back in UFC 263, Moreno was that guy. He beat him 47-24. And I think that nothing much really has changed since then. I think that he's still solidified himself as the clear favorite in this. Now, I do think it'll be a close match. I think it will go the distance. Maybe we see a split decision in there, but I still think Moreno's going to come out on top. I think, like Sean mentioned, he's got the physical attributes over his opponent. I think that overall he's going to use that to his advantage. And I think that we'll get a solid match out of this, but I don't think there's anything that can be done for Moreno to lose this one.
It is time for everyone's favorite segment of the week. That is our Fruit Loops of the week, where we celebrate the worst of the worst in takes or anything that's happened within the sporting or entertainment world. So congratulations. And of course, you get the nice crowd in the background that will celebrate in your utter failures for this week. I know who mine is. I'm just going to get it out of the way. It's World Wrestling Entertainment. It's the WWE. There's just been so much calamity. As corrupt as this company is, they keep just outdoing themselves week in and week out. All right, so first off this week, WWE announced that their annual pay-per-view Elimination Chamber is going to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And we all know the problem of going to Saudi Arabia. Yes. And the WWE has had multiple problems with flights going in and out of the Middle East as well. This has happened a handful of times, but Daddy Vince will do anything for those big bucks, man. It's all that matters to Vince McMahon. Second, you had Walter, one of the most well-known names and most popular names within the NXT UK brand and just NXT overall. WWE tried trademarking the name Gunter Stark, which is a name, if you look it up, is a name of a Nazi commander. And while Gunter Stark is not the name of Walter's character now, he's still sticking with the name Gunter. This is the WWE of today, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and how do we close this week off? Mustafa Ali, who's incredibly talented, but doesn't fit that WWE bill of being that big brute guy like a Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns, asked for his release because WWE's doing absolutely nothing with him. WWE did not grant him his request for release. And so WWE is pretty much holding him hostage, because I think it's because he probably tweeted it out and WWE is now being petty about it, but they're not going to use him. They haven't used him under any facet. So, yes, WWE continuing to outdo themselves when it comes to just pure corruption and pure just lacking any type of awareness of where we are now. This is not the Attitude Era anymore. The WWE can't act the same way they did then. While what we're seeing on screen is not their Raw and SmackDown shows are nowhere close to what they used to be. Just everything about WWE right now is bad, and which is why I found a love in watching AEW. And while AEW isn't perfect, I can say, you know what? I love watching pro wrestling when I watch AEW. I don't get that same reaction when I watch WWE. It's very rare. Although the Royal Rumble is coming up, so that will at least, take me back a little bit to when I was truly enjoying the WWE brand. So yes, WWE, congratulations. You are my Fruit Loop of the week. Sean, you're up.
I'm going to make this short and sweet because on Monday, the shortest NFL quarterback threw the shortest pick six in NFL history. That's all I got to say.
I can't believe you just did that. Congratulations. Hilarious. Congratulations.
Short, just like you, Sean.
Exactly.
Oh. Congratulations, Kyler Murray. You are Sean's Fruit Loop of the week. Evan.
Let's go. NFL officiating this entire season. It's time to just bury the hatchet on it. We've talked about it all year, and I want to talk about it now for the hope that they just handle their stuff through the divisional round and conference round and Super Bowl so we don't have to complain about it again this season. The taunting rule was stupid. Football games were affected because they were played with emotion. That is a problem. Ref ball was at an all-time high this year. The NFL had a playoff crew that will no longer be working playoff games this season because of how poorly they officiated a game and screwed the Raiders. And Cam, I'm sorry, you got screwed by the refs, and we talked about it a bit on Monday. And I just think that a sorry should be in place for the Raiders, first and foremost. But then on top of that, how do we allow them to have this consistent effect over games over the course of a season? I feel like I complain about refs every year. There's calls that I don't like. There's things that bother me. My thing is, though, I feel like it's gotten worse every year. I feel like NFL was getting better with their officiating for a few years coming out of the ref lockout that they had in 2012. And officiating was generally better. I feel about the last 3 or maybe 4 seasons, officiating has taken a massive decline, and whether that's be guys getting bought out, like head refs getting bought out by TV contracts to go, be the CBS rules analyst or the NBC rules analyst.
Because nothing makes an NFL broadcast better than having to listen to Gene Steratore and Mike Pereira just try to walk you through plays when they weren't the best of refs themselves.
But it would be even better if they were still just calling games. They'd be making the game better, and games would be getting called better. I think the NFL needs to, first off, refs should be full-time employees of the NFL and should have a full offseason to recuperate just like any other player. And their time during the offseason should only be spent worrying about what rule changes are coming, how they're going to call, how games are going to be called slightly differently in future years, and focusing on making sure that the rules that they're enforcing are for the betterment of football as a whole. There's a lot of work that needs to be done for the NFL, for the rights of the referees and their pay and their contracts and everything like that. But I think by making them actual full-time employees of the NFL year-round, you allow them to 365 days a year work towards becoming the best refs for football in the world, which is what you should have when you're in the NFL. You should have the top-level refs who their life is reffing. So get them paid enough so they're not tempted to leave for these TV deals to go talk for maybe 5 minutes total during a game on Sundays, during each game, to say. But it doesn't make sense. The NFL should care more about who's enforcing the rules and how they're being enforced, because that's the game. The game is the rules entirely. So until the NFL's rules are being upheld by an organization that is just, fair, and only works to support in the betterment of the game, officiating will be a giant Fruit Loop in the entire sports world.
Congratulations to NFL officiating. Congratulations. Your Evan's Fruit Loop of the week. All right, Brenden, close us out strong. Who's your Fruit Loop of the week?
All right. Well, before I do that, let me just say that Kyler Murray, I think, is more of a fruity pebble this week than a Fruit Loop. But that aside, my fruit Loop of the week is kind of, I don't know. This is a kind of funny one to me. I'm gonna go with Nets assistant head coach David Vanterpool, and let me tell you why. In a game this week against the Washington Wizards, Wizards had the ball with I think it was halfway through the fourth quarter. The Wizards were up by 6 on a pass from Spencer Dinwiddie that was intended for Laker legend Kyle Kuzma. David Vanterpool reached his hand into the court of play, deflected the ball, and because of that, the Nets got a turnover. Because of that, they got a steal off of it, thus giving the Nets the ball. No, the referees, talking about referees on Evan's side, the referees did not catch this, so it went in as a turnover. The Nets got the steal, and while the Wizards were winning by 6 at that point, the Nets ended up winning the game by 1. So
who's the real Fruit Loop? Is it the NBA refs or is it Vanderpool?
I mean, they're both definitely Fruit Loop-ish.
Vanterpool.
I'm gonna give it to Vanterpool because what are you doing? What are you doing? First of all,
it turned the tides around for Brooklyn.
I mean, fair enough, but that's just a bad look on the team and organization. Vanterpool got fined $10,000. The team got fined $25,000. Kyle Kuzma said that the missed call was horse bleep, so which is a great answer, by the way. But and to be fair, the main reason this is getting a lot of traction is because the Wizards ended up losing by 1. If they win the game, this isn't a problem. I mean, he probably still gets fined, but it's not the big story. It's not as big as a Fruit Loop as it has been. But I mean, it goes back to, I remember when it was a couple years ago when James Harden made a dunk, the net caught it, and it came out from under, and it looked like he missed it. And because of that, the Rockets end up losing the game. It has that same sort of vibe. But yes, referees should have caught that. They said that they just didn't see it at the time, which, I mean, it's crazy because a referee.
I mean, we have video review for a reason. Why can't we? Why does it have to be a designated time for when you can review stuff? It's ridiculous.
Apparently, it wasn't reviewable, and I don't know if there was a rule that said I had this in mind. I don't think anyone ever thought of this ever happening, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, it worked out, I guess. I mean, congratulations, Brooklyn. You got to win in January. That cost you $35,000. Congrats. But I mean, I guess you got to give him props to dedication to win the game. But yeah, it's a bad look. I think the fine is fair. But yeah, good job, Brooklyn. You continue to be the villain of the NBA, and this shows it once again.
Congratulations to Vanderpool. You are Brendan's Fool of the Week. That was a good one. I actually didn't know about that. So I'm glad that got brought up. But that will do it for this edition of the Rich Report. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. For Sean Clark, Brenden Martin, Evan McNeely, my name is Cameron Richardson. Have a great weekend. Follow our social medias in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, like I said all the time, if you're not watching on the YouTubes, go to YouTube right now and do the thing. Subscribe to the channel. Go subscribe to us on Twitch. Go subscribe to the mailing list on Substack to read all of our written content. We've got a lot of playoff previews coming out this weekend. Plus, I will be covering the NEU Montana men's basketball game on Saturday as well. Have a great rest of your weekend. We will see you on Monday to hopefully talk about some classic football games. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy what should be a fantastic weekend.